If you like the content and willing to support my effort, then please subscribe to my channel, give it a like and share it with everyone. Thank you. Hi everyone. Today we are going to analyze a game played between Indian Grandmaster Vidit Gujrathi as white and Russian Grandmaster Dmitry Andreikin as black. The game is from the World Blitz Championship 2019, round 8. Here Vidit, who is currently holding the 2nd rank in India and 22nd rank in the world, fought against a higher rated player Dmitry Andreikin, who is considered as one of the strongest players out there. Vidit is widely known for his rock-solid defense, but in this game he showed some real aggression and his hunger to win was evident. So without further delay, let us dive into the game. White opens with d4, the queen's pawn opening, signature of Vidit, and Andreikin replies with knight f6, the Indian. The game continues with c4, e6, knight c3 and bishop b4, the Nimzo-Indian defense on the board. Well, the main idea of black here behind pinning this knight against the king is to weaken white's control over this e4 square. Some of the main responses of white here: queen c2, the classical variation, e3, the Rubinstein, knight f3, the 3-knight variation, and bishop g5, known as the famous Leningrad system. Each of these ideas, each of these options revolves around the idea of taking the control of this e4 square. With the same idea in mind, Vidit went for a little unusual move f3, which takes the control of this e4 square. At the same time, it prevents this knight to come forward. These are all following the standard theory, so nothing new here. Andreikin replies with d5, going straight for the center and of course this e4 square. a3 by Vidit, asking black, what do you want to do with your bishop? Bishop into c3, b into c3, ruining the pawn structure of white here. c5, c into d5, knight into d5, d into c5 and queen a5, forking these two pawns. Now let's stop for a couple of seconds and look at the position here. What is going on? Let's look at white first. He is up a pawn, but a pretty bad pawn structure on the queen side with these doubled up pawns. He has this bishop pair, but one of the bishops is still behind the bars. He lags in development. His king is in the middle. He has two open files, yes, but there is a lot to consider for white here. On the other side, black is really enjoying the activity and development. His queen is active. The knight is ready to attack, putting the pressure on c3 pawn. He has ensured the safety of the king by making a little room for his king to castle anytime. His bishop looks a little bit passive, defending only this b7 pawn, which is weak in itself. But the most important point is black has lost the control of his e4 square, and he has no strong outpost on the center. Keeping these in mind, white immediately strikes the center with e4, attacking this knight. And suddenly white is feeling a lot better now. His bishops are activated and he's enjoying a lot of space on the board. Here Andreikin could go for knight into c3, attacking this queen, but queen d2 is there. Maybe the game could continue with knight c6, and the position is more or less equal here. The other option is queen c3 doesn't look good because of bishop d2. So here Andreikin goes for retreating this knight to e7 with the idea of remaneuvering this knight to c6, a5 and putting a pressure on this c4 square in future. Bishop e3 by Vidit, defending this c5 pawn, who is currently the frontman of his army, so it is important to defend this pawn. Castles by black and queen b3, putting the pressure on this b7 pawn. And look, white is here going exactly according to the plan, fixing all his weaknesses one after the other. Now bishop cannot move here because he is defending this pawn, so knight knight d7, putting pressure on this c5 pawn. Bishop b5 by Vidit, preventing this queen to attack the c5 pawn, and at the same time with the idea of if captures, then queen can take the pawn. So Andreikin goes for queen c7, defending this pawn. This knight is very strong here, as he is currently is the only candidate to hold the center. So it is important for white to remove this knight out of the board. So bishop into d7, and knight e2, with the idea of bringing this knight to f4 or mainly d4, where this knight will become a beast here. So Andreikin goes for e5, preventing the idea of bringing the knight to d4 or f4. So white plays c4 with the idea of remaneuvering this knight to c3 and then maybe d5. Knight to c6 by black, going according to the plan. Rook d1, taking the control of this open d file. Bishop e6 with the idea of knight a5 and attacking this queen and this pawn at the same time. But Vidit here goes for an amazing move, rook d5, which showcases his knowledge of positional sacrifices and his mastery in manipulating imbalances. Look here, if black takes the rook here, then white will go for c into d5. Maybe knight a5, queen c3, and b6 and c6. White has a good bishop with all of his pawns in the opposite color, along with a queen and a knight who is ready to join the battle. This pawn chain looks like a wall of a castle with firing windows, which will allow white to attack black's king side. Look at these windows of white here. He will bring his pieces to the king side of black, but it is very tough for black here to penetrate this wall, to break this wall with only one active knight. His rooks are behind the bars, so it will be really tough for black to attack, whereas white will have a lot of initiative here. Also at this position, if black doesn't take this rook, then white will simply go for queen c3 followed by rook into e5, making a nice little corridor onto the king side of black. In this position, Andreikin took a lot of time to analyze and to take the decision, as capturing the rook will give so much advantage to white. Andreikin goes for, after spending a lot of time, he goes for knight a5, attacking this queen. Queen c3, b6, deflecting this pawn on c5, but Vidit he's determined. He's not interested in going for anything else but the king. So rook to e5, knight takes c4 and rook to g5, threatening a checkmate on the g7 square and putting a lot of pressure on g7. So black here defends the checkmate with f6, and here comes the best move by Vidit here. Can you find it? Yes, knight to d4. The threat is if suppose pawn takes the rook, then bishop into e6, knight into e6, forking this queen and the rook. At the same time, this knight is undefended, hanging. So black has to defend it. Maybe queen to f7, defending this knight on c4. But here comes knight into g5 and queen has to move, and then white is going for queen into c4 with a check on the king, and it is not looking good for black. In fact, it is devastating for black. So the best move for black here would be queen f7, defending this g7 pawn, at the same time defending this knight on c4. Black is still in the game. The position is still plus equal here, but even grandmaster sometimes plays the inaccurate moves or blunders because of the time pressure and the adrenaline rush. Black plays here bishop f7, defending only this bishop, but at the same time it is a huge mistake by Dmitry. It not only leaves this f5 square undefended, at the same time it prevents its own queen to defend the g7 pawn. And here comes the final blow from Vidit. Can you guess the move? Yes, knight to f5. See here, all the pieces are looking at g7 right now. So there is only one defender, which is the king, and it is not at all looking good for black here, because after pawn takes, it's a checkmate on g7. So taking this rook at this point cannot be an option. Black's last try to fight back, he plays knight takes e3. Here you can pause the video and try to find the winning move for white. Yes, rook into g7 check, king h8, queen into f6. After this queen into f6 move, white's victory is inevitable, because white is just waiting for an discovery, and it is not possible for black here to defend from this position. Even after knowing his fate, Andreikin played like a fighter, like a true chess player. He goes for knight to c2 check, but the king has a short little passage onto the king side. So a continuous long attack on the king will not be possible. King to f2, queen into c5 check, king g3, queen c7 check, and here comes e5, and no further checks are possible. Black continues with bishop e6, and Vidit plays the obvious move, rook f7 check, and here Dmitry Andreikin shrugged and resigned. Because after king g8, anything like queen g7 or knight h6 is checkmate. In conclusion, this game is a good example of the f3 variation of Nimzo-Indian. So for the people who are willing to study this line, this game definitely can be one of the prototypes. And the most important thing is we should learn that the ability to solve tactics and implementing combinations are necessary even at the top level tournaments. Hence, we should never ignore practicing tactics and solve puzzles on a daily basis. Vidit Gujrathi played an amazing game of chess here, and we all know how much he is good at solving tactics. With this, I am taking your leave. See you next time with some more exciting games.